I've been a roller coaster enthusiast for a few years now, and after the 2022 season, I feel like I've ridden enough to compile a list of the best that I've ridden so far. Here are the top 15 roller coasters that I've been on. Let's first preface that I don't have as many credits as some others do. I have a bit over 100, and I don't count kiddie coasters as my credits as well. So if there's a ride that you're shocked isn't on this list, it's probably because I haven't been to that park or ridden it yet. I've been to these parks listed on screen here. Remember that these are my opinions, you're perfectly entitled to your own, and please share yours down in the comments below. Everyone values different things in a roller coaster and about roller coasters. Some might value the classic feel of a wooden coaster, others might want a nice, smooth ride, while others might want an out-of-control, disorienting experience. What I value most is number 1, airtime. I love airtime. 2, a great first drop or a good launch. 3 is intensity, and this can be a combination of speed, being disoriented, or a variety of forces. 4, a long ride time, and then 5th, tolerable restraints. The restraints don't have to be great, but they just have to be tolerable. Let's get the controversy out of the way first. Since I value airtime so highly, you're not going to see a roller coaster like the Beast in my top 15, because it doesn't have any airtime. Sorry, Beast fans. And rides like Magnum XL 200 check all my boxes, except the restraints are terrible considering the triangle bunny hills at the end of the ride. If I have to ride super defensively, it's really going to hurt the ranking of that ride. Starting off at number 15, we have Prowler at Worlds of Fun. Prowler is such an incredible GCI, we lapped this thing probably 7 times when I was at Worlds of Fun. And the back row ride didn't disappoint, even with an empty train. It doesn't have the best drop, but has consistent strong pops of airtime throughout the layout. The ride is pretty intense without any dead spots and doesn't feel too short either. GCI's Millennium Flyer train restraints aren't my favorite, but they are decent. So Prowler rounds out the 15th spot. Now sitting at number 14 is Raging Bull. I didn't know what to expect from this B&M Hyper because I heard a lot of mixed reviews on it when I came to Six Flags Great America. We rode it in the very back and man, it didn't disappoint. You get some crazy ejector airtime off that first drop in the back couple of rows. The rest of the ride has more of a twister layout, which is not common for these B&M Hypers, but the variety was really a breath of fresh air. The B&M clamshell restraints are amazing too, and this is such a long ride. Raging Bull truly is a gem, and it's one of my favorite hypercoasters. At least if you're sitting in the back row. Number 13, Steel Curtain. And this one may be a bit of a surprise, but I really enjoyed this 9-inversion hypercoaster built by S&S. I'm a huge Bengals fan, so I really don't like the theming. Hooday, sorry Steelers fans. But I certainly can appreciate the coolness of theming a ride to your local NFL team. This ride has the most inversions for any roller coaster in North America with 9 of them. It has an incredible variety of forces. You get airtime, laterals, hang time, inversions, and it has a lot of whip too, depending on where you're sitting. So I really can't complain too much about it. The slight rattle and absolutely terrible capacity are offset by a long ride time and comfortable restraints. So I still think it's worth a decently long wait for Steel Curtain. Getting in at number 12, we have Mr. Freeze Reverse Blast. This coaster literally blew me away when I rode it the first time. The feeling of being launched backwards pretty powerfully into the inverted top hat is something I've never experienced before, and I've never felt anything quite like it. We got a couple of back row rides, and it's just insane. The backward spike as well just provides incredible airtime too, and the boost really adds to it, feeling like you're just going to fly right out of your seat. Capacity is a downside, and the Premier ride's restraints aren't the best, and it is a bit of a shorter ride, which isn't great and why it's not ranked any higher. But Mr. Freeze Reverse Blast is undoubtedly one of my favorites and a must-ride for anyone visiting Six Flags St. Louis or Six Flags Over Texas. Number 11, Mystic Timbers at Kings Island. Include everything I said about Prowler, but dial up the airtime and the intensity, and you have Mystic Timbers. And it's not as much of a twister layout, it's more of an out and back layout, which is really cool and unique for GCIs. This ride does not have a single dead spot, and it doesn't seem to slow down throughout the whole thing. The shed was a bit of a letdown from a marketing perspective, but at least you have something to look at and some music to listen to while you're on the brake run. Depending on the day, Mystic Timbers can be my favorite roller coaster at Kings Island, but for now I have it just outside my top 10. It's amazing Kings Island keeps this running so smoothly too. It's just as smooth as when it opened back in 2017. Now just breaking into the top 10, we're staying at Kings Island with Orion. Orion gets a ton of hate because it isn't as good as Fury 325 and everyone had such high expectations for this ride. But I still think this B&M Giga Coaster is a great ride. It has an incredible drop, decent airtime throughout, and is relatively intense because you're going 91 miles per hour. The layout leaves a bit to be desired, but the combination of intensity, airtime, the comfortable restraints, and incredible drop has Orion just sneaking into the top 10. At number 9, we have another Giga Coaster, Millennium Force at Cedar Point. This ride has one of the best views you'll ever get from a coaster. It's fast, has a long layout, has a great first drop, and those Intamin T-bar restraints are some of the most open feeling that you'll ever have on a coaster, and it's super comfortable. There are also some pretty strong positive Gs on the turns after the first drop that can cause a gray out. So no, it's not Millennium Forceless like many enthusiasts say. It has decent airtime on the last couple of Camelbacks too near the station. Despite being 23 years old this year in 2023, Millennium Force is still one of the most popular rides at Cedar Point. It stood the test of time as the first Giga Coaster, or coaster over 300 feet. It's one of the most iconic roller coasters in the world. Although it has less modern elements and airtime than like Orion, I think Millennium Force is a bit more intense and it's a longer ride and has an incredible view, which is why I rank it slightly higher. Heading back over to Kings Island for number 8, we have Diamondback. Now I know what I can say can contradict some of what I said in other videos in the past, and that's because my opinions change. My opinions on rides and where I rank them often change every single time I visit a park. Some days I've thought Mystic Timbers is the best ride at Kings Island, other days I've thought Orion is the best. But in the end, and right now, it's gotta be Diamondback. Yes, it does have a bit of a rattle, but I always say it's part of the theming, and the rattle has never bothered me. Although Diamondback lacks the intensity of the coasters like Mystic Timbers, Orion, and Millennium Force that I ranked below it, it makes up for it with the incredible sustained floater airtime. I value sustained airtime far more than just airtime pops or strong airtime pops like Mystic Timbers has, and Diamondback is the king of sustained floater airtime. If you're riding this, make sure to sit near the back, as the longer trains on this B&M Hyper really pull the back of the train over all those Camelbacks, giving some insane sustained airtime. It has a great drop too, but that first Camelback is by far my favorite part of the ride. It gives you probably 5 solid seconds of floater airtime near the back, and there are a few coasters I've ridden that can do that. Combine this with a long ride time, good capacity, and the splashdown at the end, you have one of the best hyper coasters in the world in my opinion. Staying in Ohio, we're heading back to Cedar Point for Maverick at number 7. This coaster is quite polarizing too, as I know some that think it's really overrated, but I love Maverick for its variety of elements. It's fast, it's whippy, it's got decent launches, solid airtime, very quick transitions and inversions too, and that first drop is small but super powerful. This Intamin Blitz coaster was so groundbreaking as it was the end of an era truly. Parks were going for taller and faster roller coasters than ever before, but Maverick kind of broke that trend in 2007, proving that a ride didn't need to be taller or faster to be better. My main gripe with Maverick is its terrible capacity. Even a seemingly short line for this ride often takes more than an hour if you're lucky. This ride is plagued with downtime too from my experience, so hopefully you're lucky when you visit and you don't have to deal with that when you're waiting in line for this. At number 6, I have Ravine Flyer 2 at Waldameer. This is my first Gravity Group coaster I've ever ridden, and it's amazing. I never knew wooden coasters could have so much airtime. It's so awesome. This ride starts by ascending 118 feet with a view out over Lake Erie, and then goes through a tunnel and crosses a bridge over the road. What follows is an intense assortment of laterals, overbanks, and all kinds of airtime. Sustained, pops, floater, ejector, you name it, all sorts of airtime are felt on this ride. I rode it at least a dozen times before leaving the park, and by the end of the day, it was my favorite wooden roller coaster of all time so far, and sitting just outside my top 5. The only thing that can hold this ride back, in my opinion, is if it gets too rough. Surprisingly, the front was way rougher than the back, so I recommend trying a ride closer to the back if the roughness is really bothering you on this. It was definitely a little rough, but it was tolerable in my opinion, and Waldameer does a great job keeping up with retracking parts of this ride every single year. A few honorable mentions before we get into the top 5 are number 20 being Top Thrill Dragster at Cedar Point, or Max Force at Six Flags Great America. Number 19 being Banshee at Kings Island. 18 being Gatekeeper at Cedar Point. 17, Superman Ride of Steel at Six Flags America. And 16 being Goliath at Six Flags Great America. Cracking into my top 5 is Phantom's Revenge at Kennywood. This roller coaster used to be an old Aero Looper called Steel Phantom, and it was super rough. but Kennywood decided to turn to Morgan to turn this into more of a hypercoaster. So they removed the original 4 inversions and added some strong ejector airtime hills that are awesome. The restraints aren't bad on this either, so I can ride this thing all day long. The ride has a 228-foot drop, but surprisingly it's the second drop after the lift hill that goes down the ravine and dives underneath Thunderbolt, and it's just really cool and crazy. This ride is super smooth, but intense too. It doesn't feel too short. The airtime towards the end of the ride is some of the strongest I've comfortably felt on a coaster, which is why I love this ride so much. At number 4, we have Pantheon at Busch Gardens Williamsburg. Despite the lackluster theming in the queue and on the ride, this is an awesome ride. My favorite part is the swing launch section, where you get some strong airtime on the bunny hill during the launch, and going up the vertical spike you get some awesome airtime. I also love the incorporation of modern elements, like the hang time on the zero-G stall, and the sustained airtime you experience on the Outer Banked Hill. This ride doesn't feel too short either, and the new Intamin restraints are probably the most comfortable restraints I've ever experienced. What a fantastic ride. The only thing I think could be improved other than the theming is that the pacing feels a bit slow over the top hat and through the second half of the ride, which is why I don't have this ranked any higher. Coming in at number 3, into the top 3, we have Twisted Timbers at King's Dominion. The rough wooden coaster, formerly known as Hurler, was converted to an RMC iBox back in 2018, and they really packed all they could into this one. It's butter smooth and is like airtime heaven. Just airtime hill after airtime hill is just awesome. There are so many moments of strong ejector airtime that I absolutely love. The barrel drop is pretty awesome, and the ride feels super long too. My only gripe is you have to walk a really long way through the queue line to reach the station, even if there is no line, and the lockers always seem to be broken. But otherwise, Twisted Timbers is an incredible ride. Absolutely worth your time going to King's Dominion just for this ride alone. But at number 2, staying at King's Dominion, we have Intimidator 305, also known as I-305. This coaster is quite the adrenaline rush and probably the most insane, intense roller coaster experience in the world, at least when it comes to forces. This Intamin Giga Coaster was largely criticized when it opened because the turnaround after the first drop had such strong, sustained G-forces that it would cause people to gray and even black out from it. Cedar Fair had Intamin come back and reprofile the track to gradually incline during the turn to relieve some of that force, but it's still almost a certain gray out every time, and throughout pretty much half the ride too. Awesome in my opinion. This coaster really is like combining Millennium Force and Maverick, which is kind of what they were going for, I believe. It's extremely fast, super intense, probably the most intense ride in the world, has a good amount of airtime. The first drop is great, and the restraints are okay. They're not the best, but they're not bad. Just be aware where your neck is with those comfort collars on those quick switchbacks. But I-305 is going to be in my top 10 for a very, very long time, I can see. The intensity of this ride is so hard to explain, you just have to experience it for yourself to really understand. Some people think this is the best ride in the world because of it, and some people really don't like it because it's too intense for them. I certainly identify more with the former, but it doesn't have quite enough airtime for me to have it at my number 1 spot. And finally, my number 1 roller coaster is, of probably no surprise, Steel Vengeance. This is everything that I want in a roller coaster. A great first drop, excessive amounts of airtime, good intensity with no pacing issues, and an extremely long ride duration. It's like the perfect coaster for me, and it'll take something phenomenal to top it. But I'm sure I'll ride something that will top it someday. Every time I visit a park, this list changes in some form or fashion, so there's nothing set in stone here for me. There are still so many parks I want to visit and so many roller coasters that I want to ride to that will impact this list. But now it's your turn. Share with me down in the comments below, what are your top 5 favorite roller coasters? And what do you like about them? Why? I really would love to hear from you guys and love hearing your opinions, so let me know down in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe for more coaster content every single week. I hope you all have a wonderful day and enjoy the ride. I will see you next time.